Blood for the Blood God and Skulls for the Skull Throne. It looks like we've got the new contents of the World Eaters Combat Patrol revealed today, so let's take a look at what we've got. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we've got another fairly major World Eaters reveal. Games Workshop just showed off the contents of their Combat Patrol box. Really quite an important kit, as it's a big discount box that will get you a lot more World Eaters on the table compared with buying the kits individually. Overall, initial take is that it looks really quite good, a bit better than the Death Guard and the Thousand Sun ones that were overloaded with cultists, and it looks like it gets you a whole bunch of points in the box as well, so a win on quite a lot of fronts for me. Here's a picture of the models that you get in the new box set. We'll go through them individually in just a second. As with the other Combat Patrol box sets, I'm sure this will be likely costing £90, €120 or $150 unless Games Workshop pulls any price rises in the interim. I feel like it's kind of likely that they might up their prices with inflation a bit sometime later in the year, but I feel like that's usually a little bit later than January, February sort of time, so should be safe on the initial release, I think. We still don't know exactly when the World Eaters release wave will be coming out yet. We know that we still have Guard to go, and very likely before then. Guard got announced long before the World Eaters did, and we still haven't had their proper codex release, and the vast majority of their kits, like that new Rogue or Dawn tank. It just seems very, very unlikely to me that Games Workshop will be releasing World Eaters prior to Guard, though they did confirm them to be winter, so it still can't be all that far away. In this article, they actually do give us a little bit more of a hint than they usually do. Usually they just say soon non-specifically. In this one they said you'll be able to pre-order this in just a few weeks. Still not all that specific, but I'd say that by anyone's standards, a few weeks is probably not more than 4 or 5. My guess would be that the World Eaters will probably be dropping in somewhere around mid to late February, so from that kind of estimate it would probably mean that they're not going to be all the way into March, which they could be, seeing as it's still winter. In terms of the models in the box, in this specific preview they did actually go a fair bit more into the kit for the Juggernaut Lord and Lord Invocatus, which does seem to be a kit with a bunch more options than I thought. They've showed off the sprues for them, and we'll take a look in just a second. Really quite a fun miniature this one, a Juggernaut with a big angry space marine mounted on, either the more possessed looking Lord Invocatus, or the standard chainsword and chain axe wielding Maniac Lord. They've actually gave us a few more details as to rules and things that we didn't have before. Apparently the standard Lord's weapons will be called Exalted Chainblades, the damage 2 ones that were rumoured I suppose, and they also say that you'll be able to field multiple Lords within a World Eaters detachment, so you're not going to have the same sort of limitation as say the Death Guard do, where they have only limited units that they can field in the HQ choice between the Lords and the Sorcerers. Kind of makes sense, as from the previewed thing the World Eaters HQ slot doesn't seem super diverse. There's the couple of Lords, the Master of Executions and Demon Prince, and if it is to be believed, then there's no generic World Eaters Lord on foot. Really quite an oversight, I think, given that that's an iconic choice for any Chaos Space Marine warband, and there's no reason that the World Eaters wouldn't be able to field one, other than really maybe just wanting to push you to get this new Lord on Juggernaut, even if the kit is a fun one. Roughly in terms of pricing, I would guess that this will be around about the £32.50, €41.50 or $55 mark, probably about the same as the Beast Boss on the Squigosaur for the Orcs. It feels like it's a model and character of a similar sort of stature, and also the kit is actually quite generous with a lot of different upgrades and swaps on it, more than I was expecting to be honest. Here's just a look at the breakdown of the sprues that Games Workshop have given us today. Really quite a lot of decent options there. It looks like there's 3 different heads for the Juggernaut, including the big chain-bladed one that apparently is Lord Invocatus' mounts one. That one's called Calgaruth. And then it looks like there's 2 different options for chain axes and 1 chain sword, and a couple of different head swaps for the normal Lord, plus the one for Invocatus himself. From the rules previews that we had before, it does sound like Lord Invocatus is going to be a pretty intimidating threat on the board, giving the World Eaters around him some much needed speed to get to combat, which is often the thing that you really need in a World Eaters type force, as opposed to just more melee hitting power, as they usually tend to fare well in combat if they get there. Moving on beyond the HQ, there's going to be 2 units of 10 Khorne Berserkers in here. Really quite a meaty core of the force that. And it's pretty good news to get so many of the most iconic models in the army in one box. Plus it bodes well for there being a lot of points in the box as well, meaning that this should fill up a good chunk of your force. Personally, I think they've done very well with the new models for these. I'm sure they'll be popular, and it's really quite nice to get such a big box of them. I would say though that with Khorne Berserkers you might well want to get Rhinos in support of them. Might be worth picking up 1 or 2 of those to deliver them into battle. Pricing wise, I suspect that these guys are going to be something similar to say the Primaris Intercessors or Thousand Suns Rubik Marines, somewhere around the £35, €45 or $60 mark. Might be a little bit north of that, but I wouldn't expect it to be less. Pretty nice that they're discounted in this one though, to be honest. It means that if you wanted to pick them up second hand or things, they'll probably be regularly going on eBay and things for less than the asking price. Might be good news if you just wanted to get some of the Khorne Berserkers for say Chaos Space Marines or something, and you weren't too bothered about the World Eaters specific stuff. Then finally, to round out the box, we've got 10 of these new Jackal Blood Crazed Cultists. These are the cultists that go a bit kill crazy after being injected by a bunch of World Eater's blood apparently. Sounds like from the leaks that they put out a decent amount of raw melee hitting power. I can't help but think it might have been just a little bit more useful for the army if they cost a little bit less though. They might well still be the grunts that are just sat on objectives and things, so perhaps even a little bit less combat power and being a little bit cheaper might have been better for the army competitively. You can't deny that they're on theme though, thoroughly bloodthirsty melee troopers in the same way as the Khorne Berserkers and their new 8-bound are. Certainly sound like they'll be bullying light infantry in melee quite well. Plus you get a few cool upgrades in the box like the Dishonored with that Skull Masher thing as well. He looks like quite a fun miniature I think. Price wise, I guess they'd be around something like £30, €40 or $50. That'd be the same as something like say Admex Skitarii. I guess not entirely impossible, they might be a little bit cheaper like the recent release of the Chaos Cultists. They were just £27, so a little bit less. My instincts are though that these guys are slightly bigger and more imposing muscled miniatures and things with some more exciting things going on, so I'd guess that they might cost a tiny bit more. All a bit arbitrary though, more depends on what Games Workshop decides they should be, as opposed to any intrinsic value of the miniatures. Overall though, I'd broadly say that this box looks like a pretty decent deal for World Eaters collectors. Looks like you get around about $225 in the box for $150 in terms of price. So if you are looking to pick up these exact kits with the World Eaters release, then it looks like you'd save around about 33% compared with buying them separately. That is around on par with Games Workshop's usual Combat Patrol offerings. Looks like it's a pretty reasonable way to jump into an army if you want to, having a fair amount of the new miniatures. The only ones that are completely new and aren't in this box are the 8-bound and Angron. So having 3 out of the 5 new kits in here really isn't too bad. Compared with offerings like the Death Guard and the Thousand Sons, I feel like this Combat Patrol is a lot better. You basically traded out a bunch more cultists for a second unit of their iconic Cult Marines, and I feel like that's a lot better of a way to get started. If say you had 2 units of Jackals and 1 unit of World Eaters, I feel like that would be far more niche and you might not want to get 2 sets of it. I feel like with this one though, 1 set seems just pretty sensible, but buying 2 seems like it could be pretty viable as well. 1 Juggernaut Lord plus Invocatus himself maybe, and then you've got easily enough troops to fill out that entire section of your army. Then you can maybe add in some Terminators, Elites and Angron to round out the rest perhaps. One thing that is quite impressive as well is the amount of points that you look like you'll be getting in this box. The Khorne Berserkers are 22 points each it would seem, so overall for this one you could be getting around about 650 to 700 points depending on exact loadouts or whether or not you build Invocatus. And compared with a lot of other Games Workshop Combat Patrol sets, that is very good indeed. It's far higher than 500 points, the rough idea for the standard Combat Patrol game. Overall, broadly positive about it. Maybe combine it with a few elites and a transport or 2, and you look like you'd have a pretty solid core of a World Eater's force. Let me know your thoughts as always down in the comments below. Would you be tempted to pick this one up if it came out with the World Eaters release, and would you have done anything differently for the unit mix? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new stuff just about every day. Otherwise, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel recently, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, then check out the link in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.